The impossible discovery. The Galactic Archive, a sprawling network of crystalline data towers orbiting the capital world of the Intergalactic Council, housed the collective knowledge of 50 species. Inside one of its countless research chambers, junior anthropologist Zin stared at the shimmering projections before him. The light from the data displays reflected off his pale, chitinous skin, and his antennae twitched in a mix of confusion and disbelief. Zin's assignment had seemed routine: analyze Earth's historical records as part of the Council's standard evaluation for pre-FTL civilizations. Yet what he was uncovering defied every established norm. Battle after battle, war after war, the patterns, or the stark absence of them, emerged. "Something's wrong," Zin muttered to himself. His clawed fingers danced across the holographic console, bringing up additional data streams. Every species, without exception, exhibited clear biological triggers for surrender. Signals evolved to protect life in the face of overwhelming odds. But Earth's dominant species, humans, the data showed nothing. In fact, it suggested the opposite. He leaned back, his compound eyes narrowing. One particular record caught his attention: the defense of a place called Stalingrad. Zin played the recording, his disbelief mounting. He watched humans endure starvation, freezing temperatures, and relentless assaults, yet refused to yield. "This makes no sense," Zin whispered, rubbing his forehead. His exoskeletal plating glimmered under the room's cool lighting as his panic began to rise. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and senior researcher Liva entered. Her 6 legs moved gracefully as she glided toward Zin, her translucent skin refracting the light like a living gemstone. She carried an air of authority, and her presence immediately silenced Zin's mutterings. "Zin," she said, her voice calm but edged with curiosity, "you summoned me during my rest cycle. This had better be important." "It is," Zin replied, his voice quavering slightly. "You need to see this." Liva tilted her head, the equivalent of a raised eyebrow for her species. Zin gestured to the console, and the projection shifted to display humanity's military history. From Thermopylae to modern guerrilla wars, the records painted a vivid, troubling picture. "Humans don't surrender," Zin said, his tone flat, as if saying it aloud might make it more comprehensible. "They never have. Not even when it would ensure their survival." Liva studied the data, her crystalline eyes scanning the visuals and annotations. Her color began to shift from a calm cerulean to a flickering violet, an unmistakable sign of concern. "This isn't possible," she murmured. "Every sentient species develops surrender reflexes as a survival mechanism. It's fundamental to evolutionary biology." "Not humans," Zin insisted. "The worse their odds, the harder they fight. It's as if they draw strength from the very act of defiance." Liva's gaze snapped to Zin. "You're sure this isn't an anomaly, a cultural peculiarity confined to certain regions or eras?" "I've cross-referenced it across thousands of years of their history," Zin replied. "It's universal. Even their myths and stories glorify resistance against impossible odds. They have phrases like, 'never give up,' and 'fight to the last.' It's ingrained in their psyche." Liva turned back to the console, her violet hue deepening. "We need to escalate this," she said. "If this is true, it's not just a curiosity. It's a threat." Zin hesitated. "A threat? To who?" "To everyone," Liva said, her voice grim. "A species that refuses to surrender, that grows stronger under pressure. They could disrupt the balance of the entire council." Before Zin could respond, the room's communication panel lit up. A synthesized voice echoed through the chamber. "Senior researcher Liva, junior anthropologist Zin, your presence is requested in the High Council chamber immediately." Liva's violet shimmered with alarm. "They must have detected our findings," she said. "We've stumbled onto something much larger than we realized." Zin nodded, his antennae drooping nervously. Together, they left the research chamber, the door sliding shut behind them with a faint hum. The corridor beyond was eerily quiet, as if the station itself sensed the gravity of their discovery. As they made their way to the High Council chamber, Zin's thoughts raced. What kind of species could thrive without surrender? What would happen when humanity joined the galactic stage? And perhaps most troubling of all, what would the Council decide to do about it? The answer, Zin suspected, would change the fate of the galaxy forever. A history of defiance. The High Council chamber, a vast dome suspended in orbit above the galactic capital, was alive with tension. Representatives from 50 species filled the tiered seating, their holographic displays shimmering with data from the report that had just been presented. The room, usually buzzing with polite debate and discussion, now hummed with quiet unease. At the center of it all, junior anthropologist Zin and senior researcher Liva stood before the assembly. Zin swallowed hard, feeling the weight of countless eyes and appendages on him. The silence was broken by a low, resonant voice. Councillor Vilai, an elder of the Qatar, whose towering figure seemed to embody authority itself, leaned forward. Junior anthropologist, Vilai began, his segmented exoskeleton clicking faintly as he moved. Your report suggests that humans lack the instinct to surrender. Do you truly mean to tell us that, in the face of certain death, they continue to resist? Zin nodded hesitantly. Yes, Counselor. Not only do they resist, but their records indicate they often become more determined as their situation worsens. I've reviewed their history in detail. There is no evidence of a biological or psychological surrender reflex. Liva stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. This defiance isn't just an anomaly, Counselor. It's a pattern deeply embedded in their culture, their biology, and their societal systems. Consider their historical accounts. Time and again, they've chosen to fight against impossible odds. The chamber erupted into murmurs and flashes of color as the alien delegates reacted. Councillor Taveric of the Valtteri clicked his claws against the armrest of his seat, his species equivalent of a nervous tick. What about their early history? He asked. Surely, during their primitive stages, they must have developed some form of capitulation. Zin adjusted the holographic display, shifting it to Earth's ancient past. One of their earliest recorded conflicts was at a place they called Thermopylae, he explained. 300 warriors chose to stand against thousands, knowing they would die. They succeeded in delaying the enemy long enough for their allies to regroup. In their culture, this act of defiance is celebrated as heroic, not foolish. The murmurs grew louder. Vilai raised a hand, and the room fell silent once more. One example could be dismissed as myth or exaggeration. Do you have further evidence? Liva nodded and took over. Let's move to their modern history. World War II, as they call it. A city named Stalingrad. They faced hunger, disease, and relentless attacks. Any other species would have evacuated or capitulated. But the humans? They fortified themselves, fought tooth and nail, and turned their defeat into a decisive victory. This is but one of countless examples. A projection of Earth's history began to play, showcasing humanity's battles across millennia. The imagery was raw and unfiltered, trenches filled with mud and fire, soldiers carrying on despite overwhelming losses, civilians forming resistance movements under occupation. The room grew quieter with each scene. Councillor Vilai's eyes narrowed as he observed the projections. And what of their evolutionary psychology? Surely there must be an explanation for this. Aberration. Liva gestured toward a new display. Humans possess a unique neurochemical response under stress. Their brains release compounds that enhance focus, endurance, and even aggression. Where most species shut down under overwhelming pressure, humans ramp up. Their bodies adapt to the circumstances, often pushing them beyond what should be biologically possible. Vilai leaned back, his expression unreadable. And their cultural ethos? Equally dangerous, Liva replied. Their societies glorify perseverance. They have sayings like, never give up. Where there's life, there's hope, and even victory or death. These ideas are foundational to their identity. The room erupted again, this time with louder and more frantic voices. Counselor Eric's of the Plenary, a species known for their strict adherence to logic and strategy, clicked her mandibles in agitation. If they are as you describe, then what happens when they gain faster than light travel? Will they spread this defiance across the galaxy? Zin felt his pulse quicken. It's not just defiance, Counselor. Their resilience could make them exceptional allies. Imagine a species that won't abandon a mission, no matter the odds. They could stand against threats even the Council struggles to face. Or they could destabilize everything. Eric's countered sharply. Their inability to accept defeat could turn minor disputes into catastrophic conflicts. Vilay raised his hand once more, silencing the debate. His voice was firm but thoughtful. We are not here to decide their fate today. However, we must prepare. If humanity reaches the galactic stage, we must determine how to handle them. A quiet voice rose from the back of the chamber. It belonged to Counselor Rennell of the Azuri, a species known for their pacifist ideals. Perhaps we are approaching this from the wrong perspective. Instead of fearing their resilience, we should learn from it. Could their defiance be the key to something we have yet to understand? The chamber fell silent as the counselors considered Rennell's words. The idea was provocative, almost heretical. Yet in the uneasy stillness, there was no immediate rebuttal. Vilay finally broke the silence. For now, we will continue observing. But make no mistake, this discovery will shape the galaxy's future. Prepare for every possibility. Whether as allies or adversaries, humanity will test us in ways we have never been tested before. As the council dispersed, Zin and Leva exchanged a glance. They had come seeking answers but had instead uncovered questions that would ripple across the galaxy. For better or worse, humanity's time was coming, and nothing would ever be the same again. The human paradox. The observation deck of the Galactic Council's primary research station offered a breathtaking view of the star-streaked void. It was here that Dr. Velen, one of the Council's most respected synopsychologists, began his deep dive into the mystery of humanity. The room was cluttered with holographic projections, ancient Earth artifacts, and recordings of human conflicts. Velen's pale green skin was mottled with the dark streaks of stress, an uncommon sight for his serene species. He paced before a projection of a human soldier, battered and bleeding, yet still advancing. The audio, translated for clarity, played over and over in his mind. Hold the line. Never retreat. Velen shook his head, his long, slender fingers rubbing his temples. This species is an enigma, he muttered. Every instinct says they should falter, yet they thrive on the brink of destruction. Velen wasn't alone in his research. His team included historians, biologists, and strategists from multiple species. They had all gathered to decode the human paradox, as it had been dubbed, a species that not only lacked surrender reflexes, but seemed to weaponize adversity itself. The roots of defiance. Velen gestured toward a projection showing Earth's harshest environments. Frozen tundras, sweltering deserts, and storm-ravaged coastlines. Look at their planet, he said to his team. This is where it begins. Earth is chaotic, unpredictable, and violent. Survival here isn't just about strength. It's about adaptation, innovation, and endurance. One of his aides, a slim, feathered plenary named Ritha, chimed in. But many species evolved under harsh conditions, yet they developed mechanisms to avoid unnecessary conflict. Why didn't humans? Velen brought up another projection, this one showing early human tribes. Because their challenges weren't just environmental. They competed against each other relentlessly. Rival tribes, scarce resources, predators. They were forged in a crucible of constant struggle. Surrender wasn't an option. It was a death sentence. The room fell silent as the projection shifted to show early human innovations. Fire, tools, and later, strategies for organized combat. They didn't just survive, Velen continued. They thrived. And they turned their greatest obstacle, their environment, into an advantage. The cultural catalyst. Velen shifted focus to human culture. Their resilience isn't just biological, it's cultural. They revere figures who stand against overwhelming odds. Look at their myths. The story of David and Goliath, the defiance of Prometheus. Even their modern heroes embody this ethos, individuals who refuse to yield, no matter the consequences. Ritha nodded, her feathers ruffling. It's as if their entire species was trained to believe surrender is worse than death. Velen sighed. That belief has shaped their history. Take their Apollo 13 mission. A spacecraft crippled thousands of kilometers from their planet, with no hope of survival. Any logical species would have prepared for the inevitable. The humans, they worked tirelessly, refusing to accept defeat. Against all odds, they brought their crew home. The team exchanged uneasy glances. Ritha finally spoke up. If their refusal to surrender is so deeply rooted, how do we anticipate their actions when they join the galactic stage? The implications of humanity's arrival. Velen gestured, and the projection shifted to a timeline predicting humanity's technological progression. The final milestone loomed large, faster than light travel. They're on the cusp of FTL capability, Velen said. And when they achieve it, they'll bring their defiance with them. Ritha's feathers flattened. But their resilience could also be a strength, couldn't it? Imagine them as allies. Their determination could turn the tide in conflicts the Council can barely manage. Velen's expression darkened. That's true. But there's another side to consider. Their defiance doesn't just manifest in survival. It's in their conflicts. Their history is filled with wars fought to the bitter end. Imagine what happens when that same determination is turned against us. The room grew heavy with tension. Velen turned to the projection of the human soldier. Frozen mid-charge, bloodied but unyielding. Their paradox is this, he said. They are both the galaxy's greatest hope and its greatest threat. It all depends on how we approach them. The decision looms. As the research session concluded, Velen stood alone, gazing out at the stars. He couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's arrival would redefine everything the Council thought it knew about the universe. For a species that refused to bow to inevitability, no outcome seemed impossible. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. The station's AI announced, "Dr. Velen, the High Council has requested an urgent briefing on your findings." Velen sighed, his gaze fixed on the endless void. "Of course they have," he muttered. "Because with humans, nothing is ever simple." He turned, the holographic projections flickering off one by one as he exited the room. In the silence that followed, the lingering image of the human soldier remained, a silent reminder of the unstoppable force hurtling toward the galaxy. And Velen knew, deep in his core, that the galaxy wasn't ready for what was coming. Preparing for humanity's arrival. The High Council's emergency chamber was alive with subdued tension, its curved walls glowing faintly with bioluminescent veins that pulsed like a heartbeat. The leaders of 50 species sat in concentric tiers, their forms as diverse as their homeworlds. From the crystalline exoskeletons of the Kintar to the serpentine elegance of the Mirian, all eyes, or their equivalents, were fixed on the center platform. Dr. Velen stood before the assembly, a swirling hologram of Earth rotating above him. The projection shifted periodically, displaying key moments in human history, battles, revolutions, and moments of triumph against insurmountable odds. The room, usually filled with calm deliberation, now buzzed with quiet unease. Velen cleared his throat, the microphone amplifying his voice across the chamber. "Honored counselors, we face a unique challenge. Humanity is not just another pre-FTL species. Their psychological and cultural framework defies everything we know about sentient behavior." A hologram shifted to a diagram of human neurochemistry, showing spikes of adrenaline and dopamine under extreme stress. "This," Velen continued, "is the core of their paradox. Where most species shut down when faced with overwhelming odds, humans escalate. Their biology compels them to adapt, innovate, and fight harder. The Council's debate. Councillor Velay of the Qatar rose, his towering form casting a long shadow. Dr. Velen, your report paints humanity as both a threat and a potential ally. Which are they? Velen hesitated. The room seemed to lean forward, awaiting his answer. That depends, he said finally, on how we approach them. Councillor Eriks, the logical strategist of the plenary, interjected. If they are as resilient as you claim, why not neutralize the threat before it reaches us? Humanity has not yet achieved faster-than-light travel. This window is our only chance. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. Rhinal of the Azari, her voice soft but firm, responded, neutralize. Are we no better than predators ourselves? Humanity's resilience could be a boon to us all. Perhaps they are what we need to face the challenges we cannot. Velen raised a hand to regain control of the discussion. Both perspectives are valid. Humanity's refusal to surrender could either destabilize the Council or become its greatest asset. The key lies in the first contact. The strategy for first contact. The hologram shifted again, this time showing Earth's major cities and projected routes for their first interstellar expedition. Velen's tone grew sharper. We must proceed carefully. If we approach them as conquerors, they will resist with everything they have. History shows they unite most fiercely against an external threat. However, if we approach them with respect, as equals, there's a chance for cooperation. Councillor Tverik, his claws clicking rhythmically, asked, what makes you believe they will trust us? They've spent millennia fighting each other. Why would they accept outsiders? Velen gestured to the hologram, which now displayed images of human collaboration. Scientists working together to decode their genome, global efforts to eradicate diseases, and international coalitions for space exploration. Because when faced with challenges that threaten their species as a whole, they have shown the capacity for unity. It's rare but not impossible. We must appeal to their curiosity and their drive to explore, not their fear of conquest. The experiment. The Council murmured as Velen proposed his plan. I suggest an experiment. A controlled encounter. A small delegation will approach Earth under carefully designed circumstances. We will present ourselves not as invaders or saviors, but as fellow explorers. The goal is to gauge their response, whether they see us as allies or adversaries. Councillor Velay tilted his head. And if they choose adversary? Velen's gaze hardened. Then we prepare for the consequences. But history suggests they respond more favorably to mutual respect than to domination. The room fell silent, the councillors exchanging wary glances. It was a gamble, and everyone knew it. The countdown begins. The session adjourned with the Council agreeing to Velen's proposal, albeit reluctantly. A small delegation was assembled, composed of species known for diplomacy rather than intimidation. Velen was named as the chief envoy, a responsibility that weighed heavily on him. As the Council dispersed, Velen lingered in the empty chamber, gazing up at the hologram of Earth. The swirling blue planet seemed so small, so fragile, yet its people had proven themselves anything but. A voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Rhinal, the Azari councillor. Do you believe they will listen? She asked. Velen hesitated before replying. I don't know. But if they don't, it won't be because we failed to give them the chance. Rhinal nodded, her soft glow dimming in contemplation. Be careful, Velen. A species that never surrenders is not one to underestimate. Velen watched as she departed, leaving him alone with the quiet hum of the chamber. The countdown had begun. In less than 3 months, humanity would take its first step onto the galactic stage. Whether that step led to cooperation or conflict, no one could say. But Velen knew one thing with certainty. The galaxy would never be the same again. The day of contact. The skies above Earth shimmered unnaturally, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Across the planet, astronomers scrambled to decipher an anomaly that had appeared in orbit, an object that reflected no light but pulsated with a faint rhythmic energy. It hovered above Earth's atmosphere, stationary and silent. In the International Space Operations Center, ISOC, Commander Elena Varga stood before a massive wall of monitors, her jaw tight with tension. "Any signals yet?" she asked, her voice clipped but steady. Lieutenant Markson, the lead communications officer, shook his head. "Nothing on standard or encrypted frequencies, ma'am. Whatever it is, it doesn't seem interested in talking." Elena's dark eyes narrowed. She had read countless theoretical briefings on first contact, but none had prepared her for this, a silent visitor sitting uncomfortably close to the planet's surface. "Keep scanning," she ordered. "If they're here, they want something. We need to figure out what." The signal. It came suddenly, a soft, melodic chime that reverberated through every communication device on the planet. Phones, radios, televisions, even satellites picked up the same message, delivered in a language that was immediately understandable to all who heard it. "People of Earth," the voice began, calm and measured. "We are emissaries of the Galactic Council, here in peace. We seek dialogue and mutual understanding. A delegation will land in your capital city shortly. Please do not be alarmed." The world held its collective breath. In Washington, Beijing, Moscow, and countless other cities, leaders scrambled to coordinate responses. But on the streets, in homes, and across every corner of the globe, one emotion began to override fear: curiosity. The delegation arrives. In less than an hour, the object in orbit released a smaller vessel, sleek and organic-looking, like a living gemstone. It descended slowly, glowing softly as it approached Earth's surface. In a carefully coordinated move, the vessel touched down on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., its surface rippling like liquid under the midday sun. Crowds had gathered, held back by hastily assembled military barricades. Helena, now on site as part of the global response team, stood near the front, her hands clenched at her sides. She watched as a hatch opened, revealing the delegation. The aliens were unlike anything humanity had imagined. The leader, a tall figure with skin that shimmered like molten silver, stepped forward. Beside it stood a smaller, feathery being with luminous eyes and a third alien, whose crystalline form refracted the sunlight into rainbows. They moved gracefully, their presence commanding but non-threatening. The silver figure spoke, its voice resonating without any visible mouth. "I am Velen, Chief Envoy of the Galactic Council. We come bearing knowledge, friendship, and opportunity. Will you meet us as equals?" The first exchange. The President of the United States stepped forward, flanked by an international coalition of leaders. He nodded stiffly. "We welcome you, Envoy Velen, on behalf of all humanity. We are eager to learn from you and to share our knowledge in return." Velen inclined its head. "Your resilience has intrigued us. Your history of perseverance in the face of adversity is unlike anything we have encountered in the galaxy. We wish to understand you better." Elena, standing just behind the president, felt a jolt of pride mixed with unease. The delegation's words were flattering, but their undertone was clear. They viewed humanity as an anomaly, a curiosity, perhaps even a threat. Velen continued, "As a gesture of goodwill, we offer you a gift, a repository of galactic knowledge, containing the scientific advancements and cultural wisdom of 50 species." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elena's mind raced. Access to advanced technology could catapult humanity centuries ahead, but at what cost? The test. Before the humans could respond, Velen raised a shimmering hand. "But before we share this knowledge, there is a condition. We must understand your resolve firsthand. It is the foundation of your identity, is it not?" The crystalline delegate stepped forward, projecting a glowing orb into the air. The orb expanded, forming a holographic scenario, a massive, simulated conflict between humanity and an unknown alien species. Cities burned, ships collided in space, and a robotic voice echoed. Simulation parameters initialized. Objective: survival. Elena's blood ran cold. "You want us to fight?" she asked, stepping forward instinctively. Velen's gaze fixed on her. Not against us, against the simulation. This test will allow us to observe your strengths, your strategies, and your unyielding spirit. Should you succeed, the repository will be yours. Should you fail, Velen paused, letting the implication hang in the air. The president hesitated, glancing at his advisors. Finally, he turned to Elena. Commander Varga, you're the most qualified to lead this effort. Can you do this? Elena swallowed hard, then nodded. We don't back down, sir. Not ever. The battle begins. As Elena stepped into the holographic simulation, the crowd watched in tense silence. The test was not just for her. It was for humanity itself. The aliens' glowing eyes observed her every move, their expressions unreadable. The simulation sprang to life around her. She found herself aboard a starship, its controls alien but intuitive. A fleet of ships, human ships, waited for her command. Enemy vessels loomed in the distance, their weapons charging. Elena gritted her teeth. Let's show them what humans can do, she muttered. And with that, the battle began. The test would challenge not just her tactics, but the very essence of what it meant to be human. In this moment, the fate of Earth's future hung in the balance. Would humanity's unyielding spirit prove to be its salvation, or its undoing? Humanity's crucible. The simulated battlefield was nothing short of breathtaking, an infinite expanse of stars and shadow punctuated by the brilliance of alien warships. Commander Elena Varga stood at the helm of her virtual flagship, the Resolute, its holographic controls glowing faintly before her. Around her, a fleet of Earth's finest simulated ships awaited her orders. Each vessel felt real, from the hum of the engines to the faint vibration of the ship's weapons charging. Commander, a synthetic voice announced, enemy forces are advancing. Initial scans indicate their fleet outnumbers ours 5-1. Elena smirked, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Wouldn't be fun if it was easy, she muttered. Her voice was steady, but deep inside, she understood the stakes. This wasn't just a test of strategy. It was a trial by fire for the entire human race. The aliens were watching, studying every move, every decision. Humanity's future rested on her ability to prove that Earth's greatest strength wasn't its technology, but its unyielding spirit. The first strike. The enemy fleet, sleek and menacing, surged forward in a coordinated formation. Their ships were larger, faster, and bristling with weapons that glowed with ominous power. Elena's tactical display lit up with warnings, her fleet already outmatched before the battle began. Fleet-wide broadcast, she ordered. The simulation's eye chimed, signaling the connection to her virtual fleet captains. We're outnumbered and outgunned, but that's nothing new. Stick to your training, follow my lead, and remember, retreat isn't in our vocabulary. As the enemy drew closer, Elena activated a holographic map, analyzing every ship, asteroid, and anomaly in the simulated field. Her mind worked at lightning speed, formulating a plan. The enemy was stronger, but they were overconfident, advancing in a predictable pattern. All ships, break formation, she commanded. Draw them into the asteroid field. Make them think we're retreating. The captains hesitated for only a moment before following her orders. The Earth fleet scattered, diving into the dense asteroid cluster. The enemy pursued, their larger ships struggling to maneuver through the debris. As expected, their arrogance blinded them to the trap. Now, Elena barked. All ships, focus fire on their flanks. Pin them against the asteroids. The simulated battlefield erupted in chaos as Earth's fleet turned and struck with precision. Smaller, more agile human ships danced through the field, using the environment to their advantage. Explosions lit up the void as enemy vessels collided with the massive asteroids, their formations breaking apart. The turning point. Watching from the observation deck aboard the alien delegation's vessel, Velen and his team observed the simulation with growing fascination. The crystalline diplomat leaned toward Velen, its voice resonating with surprise. They're not fighting as we expected. They're improvising, adapting. Valen nodded slowly, his silver skin rippling with intrigue. This is their nature. Humans don't rely on superior technology or overwhelming force. They thrive on unpredictability, turning weaknesses into strengths. They're not just surviving, they're winning. Back in the simulation, Alina's fleet pressed its advantage. The enemy's largest warship, a towering dreadnought, attempted to retreat, its shields flickering under the relentless assault. Alina's eyes narrowed as she sought her chance. "Redirect all fire to the dreadnought's engines," she ordered. "If we take it out, the rest will scatter." The fleet responded as one, unleashing a coordinated barrage. The dreadnought shuddered under the assault, its hull breaking apart in a spectacular explosion. The remaining enemy ships faltered, their cohesion shattered. Within moments, the once unstoppable fleet was in full retreat. The price of victory. Cheers erupted across the simulated comms, but Alina's expression remained grim. Her fleet had taken heavy losses. Nearly half of her ships were gone. Even in victory, the cost had been steep. The simulation ended abruptly, the battlefield dissolving into a blank void. Alina found herself standing alone in the chamber once more. The silence was deafening, the weight of the experience settling on her shoulders. A moment later, Valen's voice echoed through the space. "Impressive, Commander. Your strategies were unconventional, effective, but costly." Alina turned to face the alien envoy, who now stood at the edge of the chamber, observing her with an inscrutable expression. "That's what it takes to win," she said, her voice firm. "We don't fight because it's easy, or because we think we'll always succeed. We fight because giving up isn't an option." Valen regarded her silently for a moment before nodding. "Your resolve is undeniable. It is clear why your species has endured so many trials. But tell me, Commander, how far would humanity go if the stakes were even higher?" Alina's gaze didn't waver. "As far as we need to. That's who we are." A galaxy changed forever. The delegation returned to their vessel, the results of the test recorded and analyzed. Valen addressed the High Council via a secure holographic link. "The humans have passed the test, but their resilience is both their strength and their greatest danger. They will not yield, not to us, not to anyone." The Council was divided. Some saw humanity as a potential ally, a force that could bolster the galaxy against unknown threats. Others feared their defiance, their unwillingness to bend, even in the face of superior power. For now, the Council's decision was to proceed with caution. Humanity would receive the repository of galactic knowledge, but their actions would be closely monitored. They were no longer an isolated species, and their impact on the galaxy would soon be felt. As the delegation's vessel departed Earth, Alina stood on the surface, watching the alien craft disappear into the sky. She knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had taken notice of humanity, and humanity was ready to take its place among the stars. But one thing was certain: the universe would never be the same again.